he said to Thomas, "Put your finger here and see my hand, and put out your hand and place it in my side. Do not be faithless, but rather believing." Thomas answered him, "My Lord and my God." Jesus said to him, "Have you believed because you have seen me? Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." Now Jesus did many other signs in the presence of his disciples, which are not written in this book. But these are written that you may believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of God, and that believing you may have life in his name. This is the gospel of our Lord Jesus Christ.
Thanks be to God.
Amen.
A week after Easter, Thomas showed up with his questions and his doubts. We don't know very much about Thomas. We don't know where he was from. We don't know when he became a disciple. What little we know about him is contained in 3 passages in John's Gospel. When the word reached Jesus that Lazarus had died, Jesus insisted on going to be with Martha and Mary in Bethany, though it seemed like a hopeless journey as well as dangerous. It was Thomas who then said, "Let us go, that we may die with him." Jesus went, and the disciples went with him. Thomas was a little bit of a pessimist, but he was courageous too. And then in the Last Supper, when Jesus said, "I will come again and will take you to myself, that where I am you may be also, and you know the way where I am going." Thomas sat up and said, "Lord, we don't know where you're going. How can we know the way?" Maybe the others knew what Jesus was talking about, but Thomas did not. The third is this passage in chapter 20. Thomas was missing on Easter. He wasn't at the cross. He wasn't at the empty tomb. He wasn't on the road to Emmaus. He wasn't in the upper room on Easter evening. We don't know where he was or why he wasn't there. Maybe he was afraid, and for good reason. Maybe he was seeking solitude in his time of sorrow. Many people do. That can be a mistake. It was for Thomas. Finally, he did show up, and the others shared with him their Easter joy. And his reaction was, "Yeah, sure, tell me another. Dead men don't talk. That's a bunch of nonsense." Give Thomas credit. Despite his grief and his doubts, he was there with the other disciples. He did not leave the church. So 1 week later, he was in the upper room, and Jesus showed up and said, "Peace unto you. My peace be with you." And Thomas was amazed. He said, "My Lord and my God." What actually happened? We don't know. It's a mystery. 3 weeks ago, did you see the image in the newspaper of this black hole in a galaxy 55 million light years away? 1 light year is 5.8 trillion miles. One. You do the math. And they estimate that in this black hole are 6.5 million burned out suns. It boggles the mind. It's a mystery. But there it is. I don't understand what Thomas and the other disciples experienced in the upper room. And I think it baffled the gospel writers too. Because words are almost always inadequate when it comes to describing deep, emotional, spiritual experiences. Poetry and music may do it better than prose and preaching. But what is beyond dispute is that they came to believe in Jesus, that he was alive, that he was present with them, that he was guiding them. Not a resuscitated Jesus, I hasten to add. Lazarus was resuscitated. But resuscitation does not permanently deny death. It only postpones and temporarily delays death. Resurrection is a spiritual reality and a great mystery. So good for Thomas. What about us? What is there for us in this story? Can we who share his questions and doubts experience the risen Christ and say with Thomas, my Lord and my God? Apparently, there was a question in the minds of those for whom John wrote his gospel. You know, none of the gospels were written just for fame or fortune or just for the historical record. They were written to answer spiritual questions and to meet the spiritual needs of people. Those living when John wrote could not have been in the upper room any more than we can be in that upper room. But they wanted to know Jesus. They wanted to believe in him, experience his presence, follow him. And John says in his gospel, they could. In verse 31, he writes, "This is written that you may believe in Jesus, and that believing in him, you may have life." I submit to you that God used Scripture and uses Scripture to lift Christ out of the grave and bring him alive for us. That's how I came to know Jesus. I would not describe my experience of faith the way John describes Thomas's, and in reality it may not have been all that different for Thomas. No matter what John says and how he describes it. He rises from the Scriptures, from the Gospels, and becomes for us our risen Lord. The words of Scripture can resurrect Jesus. You may not have seen his wounds or touched them, although I believe if we look closely, we can see them in the world's suffering. And we can come to know Jesus not just as someone who lived way back then, but someone who is a living presence in our world and in our lives and in our church. And John says this can be just as good and just as real as what Thomas experienced. He quotes Jesus, "Blessed are those who have not seen and yet believe." Jesus can come alive through Scripture, and Jesus can come alive and be present with us here in this church. Jesus comes to us and dwells with us and touches us and speaks to us when we gather in this place. For me, the upper room is a metaphor for the upper room, for this room, this sacred space, this holy place. Books, even the Bible, may not do it for you. We live in a post-linear age when many people don't read at all. That's okay. God can deal with that. Thomas didn't have the written word. This passage reminds us that by God's grace, Jesus can come to us live, right here, right now. And in fact, this is how Jesus has come to most Christians down through the centuries. Most could not read and did not have access to Scripture. It was in the church that Jesus came alive for them through words spoken and proclaimed, through sacraments and sacred art. The stained glass and the statues and the paintings that were rescued from Notre Dame in Paris during the fire were Middle Age teaching tools. And that's how they learned. And through hymns and chants and anthems, through silence and prayer and sharing, wherever and whenever the Jesus story has been told and sung and acted out and lived out, Christ is resurrected once again. It has led millions of people to say, my Lord and my God. So for us, I suggest to you that this is our upper room. Here we can experience the miracle of Jesus' presence, hear his voice, feel his touch, share his life with Jesus. Lord Jesus is in this very room.